www.neighborshouse.com. And also, if you can support the organizations like Crossroads and Community Care Alliance and House of Hope, all of them do the same work. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Everybody, it's a pleasure to see so many of you here on this special occasion. My name is Kimberly Simmons, and I'm the new executive director for the Rhode Island Coalition to End Homelessness. As you know, the coalition works alongside community organizations, social service agency advocates, and persons with lived experience, with one goal, that is to end homelessness in Rhode Island. We are excited here today with some really good news, which yesterday afternoon we would never have known, but Governor McKee proposed a budget amendment allocating roughly $30 million to support and stabilize our state of homelessness system. And it is so critical. I mean, we are very excited, but we don't want to let up. We are important in the process. It's not gone through yet, although this is very, very different and unusual. We have to still apply the pressure, still educate folks on the need and why this is so vital to the state of Rhode Island. So this is welcome news to all of us, all of the stakeholders involved and advocates who've been trying so hard to make sure that we have the resources. And we're thankful to Governor McKee and Secretary Pryor for their leadership. More is needed to support unhoused Rhode Islanders who are still living on the street. And recent data collected by the state's homelessness management information system estimates that 529 Rhode Islanders who are, experience unsheltered homelessness at the beginning of April 2024, a 645% increase since January 2019. Homelessness has increased primarily due to the lack of affordable housing, causing hundreds of elderly families with children and people who are sick and dying to be forced into homelessness for the very first time. We're asking state leaders to support Governor McKee's proposed amendment. Without this much needed funding, hundreds more Rhode Islanders will become unsheltered and exacerbate an already burdened homelessness system. I am so proud to introduce our leaders today, but I also want to recognize those who are in the room. That special recognition, Senator Costello. Representative Speakman. Representative Tansey. Representative Handy. And also our agency leaders who are in the room. We're so thrilled to have you as well. And that's Eileen Yates. Now I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Representative Tansey has served the people of Narragansett and South Kingston in District 34 since she was first elected in November 2010. She's a member of the House of Finance Committee and chairs its Human Service Subcommittee. So we welcome you. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Those of you at home don't know that this room met its capacity 3 times over, and so the vast majority of people had to be shuttled out into overflow rooms. And it dawned on me, very obviously, right, that there's an overflow capacity in the shelters, and that there is unexamined and unaccounted for urgency in the need for housing people. And I just, I wanted, it was that juxtaposition of the overflow and the overflow. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to come out here today and to make sure that we don't forget and that we are fully aware of the situation. Another surprising thing happened last night. As was alluded to, we got the call that the governor is introducing the budget amendment. And I cannot help but say thank you again to all of you for your advocacy, because that's not something that happens easily in our state. Your voices are heard, and we understand. I think for the first time in a long time, I'm getting goosebumps just saying that. Your advocacy has worked. So I just want to say, first and foremost, I appreciate this budget amendment. I want to thank the Secretary as well as the Governor for dedicating state funding to respond to the consistently rising rates of homelessness. I'm going to get my glasses. And we do need to have a plan to address this crisis. And the action plan that is being presented today, provided by the Coalition of Shelter Providers, is something that we seriously need to consider and to continue to push for. And with the plan in place, we won't be the last to respond. We won't be responding last minute to these crunches like we are now. We need to be proactive and we need to be collaborative, and this is just a great start to that process. And our state is already feeling the strain of having so many people unhoused. It's obvious when so many hundreds of applications for every apartment that comes up. The urgency with which the House is responding to the housing crisis. It's something that any of us who know someone who is looking for a place to live right now can understand. No matter what income bracket you're in, the pressure is on people and it's continuing to grow. But when those homes and those houses and those apartments aren't there for people, when people are forced to live outside, that creates a burden on services for police, fire rescue, and hospitals. When we decrease shelter funding, the costs of these services do increase. And we can't forget that it is important to make these investments now. But it's also the right thing to do. It's a moral obligation that we as a state have, and it's the right thing to do. I want to thank, I see Dr. John Lombardi came in while I began speaking. I want to thank him for his longstanding advocacy for the homeless in our community. And with that, I want to invite you all, while you're here in the State House, to meet your reps and your senators. If you haven't already, meet with them today and get them to understand that while the governor has made this proposal, it is the first step. We, as the House, need to recognize the need for that and keep it in that budget because there are so many competing interests. And then the Senate needs to pass the budget with that money in it. So, again, make yourselves heard, make yourselves seen, and let's get this done. Thank you all.
The CEO of Amos House has been an advocate for many years, fighting for people experiencing homelessness. Amos House is a committed partner, and he has stepped up multiple times to help time and time again for this cause. Thank you so much, Eileen.
So I only found out this afternoon that I was going to be speaking, and if I had written a speech, I wouldn't read it anyway. So I'm just going to speak from my heart, as I always do. But I want to start by having the folks in the room with lived experience who would like to stand up and acknowledge who you are can do so right now. Including people with lived experiences, but we usually talk about having one person rather than the whole community take front and center. So I wanted to make sure that we acknowledge the daily struggle of folks that are really going through this. As many of you know, we've been doing this work for a very long time. And I don't know how many of you have ever seen the movie 50 First Dates. Yeah. You kind of have an experience and you immediately forget it. Well, sometimes I feel like that's what's happened over the past 30 years of my work in this space. We seem to never get through the crisis. We start a calendar year where we're gung-ho in July to think about how we're going to handle winter emergency homelessness. And then we go back in the spring, discharge people back to the street and start all over again. That's not solving homelessness. Homelessness is not a single issue problem. It's a public health crisis.
Yes.
And there are many reasons for that. And it's also not just a public health crisis. It's a crisis of racism, systematic oppression that has been going on long before I was born and is probably going to continue after I'm not here anymore. And we have to look at changing the systems that we've created that keep people so stuck. We have a housing crisis. We've watched hundreds of people get evicted from apartments by landlords who have just put them out because they can triple the rents. And I know many of those people because they've come to Amos House saying, help me, I don't know where to go. Last winter we had an 80-year-old couple come in who had been living in the same home for 30 years, and the landlord sold their home. Now, that is more than just a public health crisis. That's a moral crisis, right? But we have blamed people who are homeless for their situation. Thank you, Jessica, for the words that you said, because you really actually talked about that. We're blaming people rather than creating solutions. And what we've been saying since pre-COVID was that we need a transitional plan of 3 to 5 years where we have enough shelter and a comprehensive continuum of shelter options for folks that are okay being in a 125-bed shelter, for those folks that need a smaller place where they're less afraid and they can put their head down at night and not worry about what will happen to them. We need shelters for folks that want to be in recovery so that they can be safe, and shelters where people who are actively using will have 24-hour supervision so they don't die. When we ran the warming center last winter for 8 months, we had 200 people a night. We had many people that were using substances. We had Narcan available 24 hours a day, and nobody died. Lots of people were given Narcan, but nobody died. So we have to be able to look at all of the different kinds of shelter needs that we have. We need a temporary solution, and we need to build housing. A lot of the housing that's getting developed is based on tax credits, and what's affordable is 60% AMI. That's $55,000, $60,000 a year. I know a lot of people who cannot afford that. And when I say how many units are for people who are 30%, we don't really have them in the budget because tax credits don't support that. So we need those kinds of solutions. We need more supportive housing. We don't have enough housing vouchers. The last I heard, there were about 179 people with vouchers to get a unit that will expire in 3 months. 3 months. And they've been looking for 6 months. So they lose the voucher, it gets assigned to another new person, and that person starts all over again. This system is insane. And we need a collective group of people that are not fighting over the dollars with each other, they're not pitting one against the other, and we're really working together to find solutions that address every single unique person. Because every single person sitting in this room, they have a different housing need. And they have a right to have the housing need that suits them and makes them feel safe for themselves and their families. So I am very grateful for the dollars that we put back into the budget, or proposed, but I'm also angry because we've been doing this over and over again, and it is never changing. And until we get out of this loop, we are not going to solve homelessness. So that's it. That's all I got.